Hi, Misha here, and we've already looked at a couple of videos on clone troopers and on stormtroopers. Now I felt like it's time to talk about Mandalorians in general. And of course we will talk about Boba Fett and Jango Fett some, because yes, I do consider them Mandalorians. How can you not consider the first one we ever saw and the one we only saw for 25 years not to be a Mandalorian? It seems a little weird to me. As well as new ones like Djarin and the armor, kind of going over a bit of culture, but mostly focusing on the armor and armament because I've kind of been in a firearms mood lately. So mostly going to be looking at their guns, and Mandalorians, well, they got lots of guns, kind of their thing. They're both uniform and customized. It's an interesting in-between and a long and interesting history. Of course, these are all 6-inch, so 1/12 scale Black Series, ranging from some very old models or toys or figures, whatever you like to call them. Hell, I'll even go with dolls, even though they're not really dolls, but it didn't bug me, to some very new ones. So let's get into it. Have a little fun this weekend. Some basics before we look at individual ones. The Mandalorian armor setup dates back 7,000 years, so not all that old as far as the Star Wars universe goes, but not new, with the first sets of armor being very custom, called Crusader, and then that was led on to the Neo Crusader armor, and they were originally designed to fight, that's kind of funny though, I'll leave it in, Fett Jedis. So it's basically a way to give regular humans a way to be on par with Force ability, not just humans, but anyway, from the planet of Mandalore, although because of their willingness and ability to accept foundlings into their clans and coverts, it doesn't necessarily mean that all Mandalorians have to be human or humanoid even. And there are some common traits with all the armor, especially after the Neo Crusader armor. For one, the helmet, it's almost universal, as is their use of jetpacks. And then there's other various pieces of armor, typically a breastplate and van braces on the wrists. Those seem to be common. And of course, guns. Lots of guns. And those would change and be modified and selected by their wearers. And so the armor can be hundreds of years old. It's generational, it's passed down. Each member will customize it some, but still kind of keeping the basics. And it's made of Beskar, or Beskar Gam, iron skin, which is a type of metal found on Mandalore that is very resistant and malleable. It also seems to be very lightweight because the average weight of the prime armor is only about 10 kilograms, or about 24 pounds for the basics. But yeah, it's kind of part of their culture. In fact, they identify their armor not only for protection, but as identification and to provide privacy, to kind of disguise their identity. That much I completely respect and understand. So it's very key to their warrior culture and traditions and part of it. And if you can't tell already, it directly led to the clone armor and thus the stormtrooper armor. So with that, let's take a closer look at the very first Mandalorian we ever met, Boba Fett. As I said last time, I would pick up a stand for these videos. So kind of found one that seemed to work out well for my purposes. This is from NECA. There are various ones that will plug into the feet holes of these figures, but not all figures have little feet holes, feet hole pegs. Even the ones that do, they're not always the exact same size, so I decided more of this style would be good. Plus it's adjustable, and I have other plans for it for the main channel, so yeah, let's just say we're going to be doing a mascot of sorts. Here he is here. The camera doesn't quite stretch up high enough maybe, but Boba Fett himself first appeared in November 1978 in everyone's favorite The Holiday Special. Something that I was blissfully unaware of as a kid, thank God, because it really only aired a couple of times on TV in the 1978 season, and then that was it. I think I first discovered The Holiday Special in the 90s, right around the time that QuickTime videos were coming out, and things like Troops, the cops knockoff faux thing. I remember those were kind of getting passed around old zip drives at the school. It was kind of that convergence of space and technology, but I remember first seeing it probably in 1998, 1999. But I think everyone acknowledges that Boba Fett was the only decent thing about that, and he was first released actually as a toy even earlier that year, so he predates Empire Strikes Back, which is what this is from, 1980. He always kind of had a secondary presence. I was never like one of those people that was just super Boba Fett entranced, but he was always cool, but I never had him as a kid. I don't know why. I just didn't. So here he is, and we always knew this was Mandalorian armor. It's kind of debated, is he a Mandalorian, is he not? Again, since he was the first to introduce it, I say yeah, because without him we probably wouldn't have Mandalorians. But I get the arguments that say he's not, and hey, George Lucas didn't think so, but this is the basics. This is his original setup here. Well, hey, we tried to knock it over. Hey, because of this figure's hoses on the arms, it's kind of hard to position. And this gun, this is his EE3. It has a thumbhole stock, so he must live in California. It's a little hard to get in there, and you're kind of limited because of the stock itself. We can talk about it to begin with. This is a Blastech product, the gun, not the figure. Designed for medium range. It was built for police use, law enforcement, private security, so not necessarily a military gun, but even during the Clone Wars, it found a home with Mandalorian police, security forces, and even some of the military. Boba Fett's version is a little bit customized for long-range accurate shots with a scope, and it's designed to be durable, reliable, and relatively maintenance-free. It was also a relatively inexpensive gun, and we see other bounty hunters using it besides him, but of course he made it famous. And on his hip here, he actually has a Sacro K11 disruptor pistol, which is seen in the Holiday Special, and it is, a disruptor pistol, but Darth Vader wouldn't let him use it, so he didn't get to have fun with it in Empire Strikes Back. It disintegrates things. It's a short-range weapon, not particularly accurate, but powerful. So that's his original setup. He's got a kind of a half cape, and then he has his iconic jet pack, which most Mandalorians would use. This is a Z6 jetpack, complete with the anti-vehicle, anti-armor guided rocket. And that all ties into the helmet, which is kind of the center of the whole Mandalorian thing here. It has this rangefinder. When it's up like this, it gives 360-degree protection and detection. When folded down in front of the faceplate, it gives better view and data inside. It has the T-visor and the central computers in the helmet and everything else. Pretty much everything ties there. One thing I must say, since there's not, telepathy or cybernetics inside there, how do they control it? The only thing I can think of is they use their tongue going blah, 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 blah. Just imagine that every time Boba Fett's doing something, he's actually just flicking things with his tongue inside his helmet. But it's all tied to that. The helmet itself has about 5 or 10 minutes of air inside, and that can also connect to an emergency supply of air elsewhere on the suit for up to 2 hours. So it is at least airtight in theory. The whole armor It has a body glove, much like a stormtrooper. Now, Boba Fett here, he's got the chest piece, he's got the shoulder pads, but he doesn't have a lot in the way of leg armor. But he does have boots with spikes on them, because who doesn't like kicking things with basically space cowboy boots? Oh, and he's got the cod piece. Stuff on his belt. But outside of the external weapons, the vambraces, one on each arm, no matter which Mandalorian, they always have fun little things in them. They can change what's in them. But for Boba Fett, he's got a flamethrower. He has a vibro blade. He can have wrist darts, or he has some dart launchers on the knee pad area. They can have rip cords, grappling cords. Basically, they're Swiss Army knives. Kind of, again, highly customizable. And again, the armor itself was always intended to be painted, given sigils, and whatnot. Now, this is, like I said, the Empire Strikes Back get-up. I do have other Boba Fetts, but I think we'll do a separate Boba Fett video, not to make this all about him, but yeah, I definitely consider him a Mandalorian. And this is in his Empire Strikes Back guise, where he mostly stands there and looks cool. But let's move on to his father. And by father, I mean clone. Well, Boba Fett's the clone in the universe, but in our world, he came first, and Jango Fett came second. And here we have him. Move him a little forward here. The jetpacks make positioning these a little interesting. Now, if this is articulated, I could make it exactly right, but since I'm switching these in and out, I don't really want to. Of course, we met Jango Fett in 2002 with the Attack of the Clones. Frankly, one of the better acted parts of the movie, because it did not involve sand. Well, at least until Geonosis. I guess everything involves sand in that movie at some point. But this is him in kind of his cleaner appearance. Technically, it's from the Gaming Greats setup, but it's him as a bounty hunter. Now, in Star Wars, at least history, legend, canon, I forget what's what now, but he was actually Mandalore, leader of the Mandalorians at one time, so that's why I tend to think of him as a Mandalorian. He might be an excommunicated one because of his resistance to other political parties we'll talk about later, pre-Vizsla and all that. But since he was leader of the people at once, I'm pretty sure that makes him a Mandalorian, even if he was as a foundling originally. Now, his armor is still nominally the same as Boba Fett's. Boba Fett inherited this armor, but, like I said earlier, they were always willing and even encouraged to customize. Now, the breastplate and helmet are very similar, and even a lot of the gear in the vambraces is the same, except we definitely know he had the ever-famous Camino saber dart in his vambrace. He's still sporting the Z6 jetpack. He used that early on in the film and before. This is kind of a larger scale jetpack. It has that big missile launcher, gyro stabilizers, movable nozzles for flight. It has about 1 minute of fuel, and it's designed to operate in either short little 3-second bursts, which can give you about 100 meters horizontal or up to 70 meters vertical, depending on the gravity and depending on average weight. And again, if average weight and size of the person using it, it has about a top speed of 140 to 150 kilometers, so about 90 miles per hour. You can also do it in longer range bursts of 20 seconds, so about 3 20-second bursts instead of 20 3-second. Or if you wanted to burn all your fuel, you could. You can get about 2 kilometers, so getting you out of harm's way. And of course, that was all controlled by the helmet. If you look down his legs, though, you'll notice that he has the full thigh and shin armor. And he doesn't have the spike-tipped boots. That's because Fett customized his armor for more speed, agility, and because Jango here was doing different type of work in a different galaxy, he needed more protection and defense, plus he was in a galaxy full of Jedi. The Beskar armor was lightsaber resistant, but not proof, and it did have a few weak spots, such as the neck joint, something Jango Fett realized as he saw a purple blaze coming towards him. But it also was quite blaster resistant, maybe not full laser, like turbo laser, but lighter blasters. Speaking of, you'll notice he, in kind of cowboy style, is dual wielding. One pistol on this hip, and I put one in his hand here for you. This arm does bend, but because of the hoses on this other side, and because the figure's not brand new, I didn't want to stress them, so I didn't. I.e., I looked at the prices for these on eBay now and thought, I don't want to break mine. But this is a different blaster pistol than Boba Fett had. This is the Westar 34, made by the Concordia Crescent on Mandalore. This is a quick draw blaster meant for short but intense firefights, gunslinger style, and carrying two of these was kind of Jango Fett's thing. It only held 20 shots, but it could get them off very quickly, and it was prone to not overheat. It was actually built from a specific alloy to keep it from overheating as best as possible, and just powerful short bursts of intensive firefights. And Jango Fett's were custom built for him from the factory with lighter grips and everything for quicker, speedier draw. So these were, again, cowboy gunslinger pistols. And that's kind of one of the neat things about the Mandalorian. They definitely kind of lean into the whole knights in armor thing, but they the jetpack's kind of giving me fits. I can close it up, but oh well. You get the notion here. Take him out. You get the notion that these were the old school knights where the armor was custom made. In fact, the armor was hand forged by metalsmiths or armors that we'll talk about in a bit, using that Beskar, as far as I know, only found on Mandalore, maybe a few other places. But yeah, this is nominally the same armor that Fett would later wear, just customized in a different way. And once Jango lost his first jetpack and one of his pistols at Kamino, he would use the second type of jetpack we're about to look like, and only one blaster at Geonosis, which probably contributed to his demise. As you might imagine, a personal jetpack like this, when it works really well, but throughout the films we see these malfunctioning, and it's usually not good. In Boba's case, it both got him into, but also out of, the Sarlacc pit. In Jango's case, the first time his malfunctioned and blew up, he lost Obi-Wan, and the second time he wasn't able to get away from Mace, hence that purple blur. So these were our introductions to Mandalorians. And for a while, that's about all we got, until the time of the Clone Wars series. Next up, we kind of moved to the first generic trooper / military Mandalorian. This is called the Death Watch Mandalorian. At the beginning of the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians were kind of in a peace thing. At least they had a peace government led by Satine Kryze. But many still preferred their warrior past, and that's where we have Death Watch. Yay. And this is just kind of a generic Death Watch guy, although he's technically from the Mandalorian. They existed, and with the blue marked armor way back when. Pretty well standard Mandalorian get-up, helmet, and all that. Now he has the alternative JT-12 jetpack. It has about the same flight time and characteristics as the Z6, but it's designed for a different type of missile, the MM-9 missile, although they can be fitted with the anti-vehicle missile from the Z6 as well. It has more integrated thrusters as opposed to sticking out, and it's just a little more streamlined, a little lighter, but it's also less protected, less armored, maybe a little less durable. Seems like the Z6 is preferred, but the JT-12 is still a backup from a lot of Mandalorians and more MASH issuance. In fact, a special version known as the JT-12C was mass-produced for the clone Jet Trooper. So, not only used by Mandalorians, but also the Republic, the Grand Army. In his hands, we have an interesting weapon. It's a two-handed jobber made by the Concordia Crescent Company on Mandalore. This is the Galar 15. It's considered a long-range, powerful blaster rifle with scope, and it was designed for the Mandalorian Guard and military, although later it would see issuance and use by obviously Death Watch here and many others. But this is kind of their full-scale gun, and it was considered to be built from very high-quality materials, and it was produced for a couple of decades at the very least. And it had a very good price on the secondary market. Now on this guy's hip, we have a Westar 35 pistol, just one. And that's the successor to the Westar 34. A little more advanced, whereas the 34 was meant as a more gunslinger gun, quick draw. The 35 was meant to be more versatile and more military. But yeah, the Death Watch jobber. It's a really neat figure, and kind of a sneak hit. It's not a reuse of Boba Fett or Jango Fett, which are actually different bodies. It's its own thing, and it came with some somewhat unique parts. So that's neat. There's always the temptation with these, I'm sure, for the factories, just to do a repaint. Try to take him out. The holster gets in the way, and you see the jetpack comes right off. It just pegs in like a old school G.I. Joe. Come out. They're always difficult when you don't want them to be. Thanks, Nika. Nah, it works fine. It's just because we're on camera. The holster is pretty neat. It has a strap that buckles over it. Like I said, there's peg holes in the back. Actually, there's a total of 3 to kind of keep it centered. So that's good. There's kind of a rubber overlay to represent the armor. And with these, articulation's a lot better with the newer styles. And no removable helmet on this one, because it's just meant to be a generic trooper guy. And our jetpack, not much going on here. It's pretty fixed. On the other ones, these boosters do move, but on these, not really. And the missile is just in there. With both of these jetpacks, they could also replace the missile with a winch and cable to hook something and lift it up if they didn't want a missile. Again, like most Mandalorian stuff, very versatile. That's kind of what they're good at being. So the Death Watch was a thing, but it would split apart in 19 BBY towards the end of the Clone War into a couple of different factions. Here we have the so-called Mandalorian Super Commando, and I put him on the stand kind of braced on his pistol holsters. See how that works out, because the other guy was kind of resting on his jetpack. This is a Mandalorian from the Death Watch who followed good old Maul after he killed Pre Vizsla, the previous leader of Mandalore after Satine. And split Death Watch in 2. And First, I was going to buy, they had two versions of this. There's one called the Loyalist, and there's this one. I was going to get the Loyalist, but I thought he's going to look a lot like the previous one. This one's got little spikes on his shoulder and on his head. Thought that was kind of interesting and different, because it's mostly a Jango Fett upper, although if you notice the legs are different. And he's got two holsters, but they're for the Westar 35 I put in his hand here. He didn't come with the EE3, I just put it in his hand earlier because I had a spare one. Again, these EE3s were used by bounty hunters, but also police, and the Super Commandos had some too. And he comes with a JT-12 jetpack. But I thought he's a good example of how they customize their armor, representing the Civil War that happened at the end of the Clone Wars with Maul and others. The Westar 35 was a very integrated little pistol. It was also designed to be durable, rugged, and it tied into the computer on the helmet to give data, targeting data, and also capacity data that's running low on energy or amount of gas. And also just an overall status report. The 35 could also operate in a vacuum or underwater. I guess he kind of looks like he's flying his jetpack slightly backward. But typically, the Super Commandos would just carry two of these pistols, but also sometimes a rifle. So, like I said, and they painted themselves in a red mix. I just thought it'd be a little interesting to vary it up a bit. But the Maul Mandalorian combination would not last for very long. The Republic would turn into the Empire, and that would be soon ousted. Next up, we have the other side of the Civil War, with the Night Owls, i.e. Bo-Katan Kryze. Although, it's always going to be Starbuck to me. That's just kind of how that rolls. Satine's sister, and for a time, wayward sister. Kind of one of those once enemies, now friends situation. They, along with the so-called Mandalorian loyalists, opposed Maul's Super Commandos and all that. And whereas the Super Commandos are kind of brute force, the Night Owls were more strategic, light infiltration, get in and out, assassin style. To that end, they carried dual Westar 35s again. They had a somewhat unique helmet. And I've lowered the visor on this one just to show you it comes down. And they had a lightweight, customized version of the Z6 jetpack. To me, frankly, it looks more like the JT-12, but everywhere calls it a Z6, so okay. Anyway, it's a little bit of a smaller version. Make a couple of different figures in this style. Casca Reeves is another one. And Sabine Wren from the Rebels show is quite similar as well, including the same basic two blasters and a very similar helmet, but a different body. And by this point, you've got a very articulated body and removable helmet for the first time. Well, not first time, they're Jango Fett over there, but they're starting to do it some, because they can. But after the Civil War was over and all of that, Bo-Katan would appear again in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, so the modern live action, still played by Starbuck, which is neat. I like continuity and consistency. And it seems like very good casting to me. Kind of very fitting for that role of a dedicated fighter and not always right, and kind of an odd type of nobility. But it goes to show a different side and still customization of Mandalorian armor and culture. And all of love that. Oh, and now she's friends with Ahsoka, so that's great, I guess. But yeah, the Night Owls, kind of a different division or sect or clan or even covert, if you like, split off from the Death Watch and pretty much in exile after the Night of 1,000 Tears, as are our last ones. Okay, I tried putting it on the stand. I'm sure if I fiddled around with it or moved the backpack I could, but nah, I'll just hold it. This is the so-called heavy infantry Mandalorian, i.e. Paz Vizsla, brother of Pre Vizsla, who was mauled to death. And if you can't tell, it's a deluxe figure, because he's big, and it comes with really just one accessory, but it's a giant one. We have this jet backpack, and it has a hose that plugs in and can be removed from this giant flamethrower on the wrist here. Again, part of the customizable van braces, but this is a major flamethrower. That's connected. And then we have another hose that leads up here to this blaster cannon. And of course it can detach and go in the hands. It actually has 3 different grips if you want to mount it in the hands in different ways. And 3 barrels. I looked everywhere and I could not find a name for this blaster. It reminds me of a lot of the kind of 1990s video games, 3 barrels, but as of now it doesn't seem to have been named. Either way, it's a big ass gun. Kind of like the E-Web. On top of that, he just has really thick, heavy armor. And he has a vibro blade, as we know from Mandalorian, when he fights with the Mandalorian sometimes. And he has this kind of waistcoat or comma or half skirt in the back. I always wonder why these Mandalorians keep putting cloth around where jetpacks come from. Must be really fire resistant. And he has a different type of helmet. It standard T-visor, but instead of the movable rangefinder on the right, it has this fixed block ear sensor on the left. Maybe a newer design or just one more for his weapons. This jetpack too seems to be more of a sustained flight jetpack. Again, I don't really know its name, or it could just be another Z6, but with more fuel. But we see him using it for quite a duration on the screen. But he's one of the survivors. And at the end of what's going on in The Mandalorian, one of the few left in the quote-unquote tribe. And that part of religious zealots. But, you know, after your planet's been virtually destroyed, yeah, zealotry tends to happen. He's a physically bigger figure and person in the show, played by Jon Favreau. Again, pretty well articulated, and to me does feel like what a deluxe would. He's just bigger, heavier. Maybe having the vibro blade would have been neat, but otherwise we get this giant flamethrower and very articulated cannon. The grip does fold on the cannon, and again it pegs into the backpack quite securely. But this is back to the brute force Mandalorian for sure. If the Night Owls are kind of the light strategic aspect, yeah, this is the just, you know, beat the crap out of things. You know, it'd be really cool, a Wookiee Mandalorian. Yeah, Wookiee foundling that the Mandalorians took in. Just imagine that. Pretty neat though. Again, the heavy infantry variant, kind of completing the overall lineup. But from there, we have to get to kind of who's at the head of this, and well, armor, even well-crafted armor, has to be maintained. So this. I'm talking, of course, about the armor. And at first, it might not seem like she has any weapons. That would be incorrect, as several stormtroopers found out. This is the head of the coven, or covert, or clan, known as the tribe, or the Children of the Watch, presumably something to do with the old Death Watch. Again, also known for being religious zealots who never want to remove their helmets in front of other people. Remember how I said they must be manipulating them with their tongues inside? Imagine not pulling the helmet off very often. That's got to get ripe in there. Either that or there's like a built-in shower. That'd be great. My helmet's stuck on shower mode. it's on the suds mode. And you just see soap coming out of the base of a Mandalorian's helmet. Yeah. But that's that whole thing. Now, she's the one that, and people like her, kind of the center, basically a blacksmith. Old school blacksmith. Makes the armor, maintains the armor, can craft armor, weapons, jetpacks even, using Beskar. When they don't have Beskar, they can use Durasteel. And there's plenty of knockoff Mandalorian armor, especially after Mandalore was controlled by the Empire. But now people like her made the real deal. Now in her hands are some tongs and a hammer, but these aren't just regular tongs and hammer. They're space tongs and hammer. Now I think they're called like magnetic, something else, and like force tongs, where they're, mechanically assisted, and the hammer is magnetic, which we have real magnetic hammers in the world. Either way, we see her wipe out a whole squad of stormtroopers with these, so I can't imagine being tonged and beaten to death with the hammer is a pleasant way to go. Kind of makes what the Ewoks did to the stormtroopers look mild in comparison, no? And she's the only one we have without a backpack. She has kind of this, not exactly shawl, but not exactly a cape. Kind of a snuggie, a blanket on her back. But everything about her is either heat-resistant, leather, metal, and of course she has her own little helmet. Interestingly, it does have little spikes on top. Almost kind of like the not the Death Watch, but the Super Commando, the Maul version. Since we're not through the entire Mandalorian series, we don't really know her complete backstory. Maybe we'll learn more. Be kind of interesting if she was a splinter from the Maul group, or remnants of. But Paz Vizsla is part of the tribe too, and therefore under her authority. Yeah, pretty much what you see here: hammer, tongs. This back piece is removable. Again, the helmet is not, because she would be mortified. It'd be basically like undressing her. She would not like that, so it's not removable. And with that, we come to our final Mandalorian. I'm referring to, of course, the Mandalorian himself, Djarin. Last but not least, probably the most Mando to ever Mando. And I've seen some people say they don't like how this cape hangs, but I think kind of draping it over the arm like this seems fine. He's got his J-12 backpack, jetpack. But it doesn't seem to have the same missiles as the other ones. So that's kind of neat. And I did give him the dark saber. That's a whole plot point. It was actually, was it Traz or Taz? Vizsla made it 1,000 years ago. He was the first Mandalorian Jedi. And now it's this whole big to-do thing in Mandalorian society, especially ever since, again, the Night of the 1,000 Years. Originally, these figures come with this rifle, the Ambin sniper rifle. Has an optical scope, long barrel. It can both disintegrate as well as fire at regular shots, and it has this kind of forked, charged end that I've seen referred to as an electro bayonet, which is kind of fun. They can shock the crap out of people and stun them. And actually, this is an interesting piece because It's directly inspired by and based on the rifle that Boba Fett had in 1978 during the cartoon part of the holiday special. It's not exactly the same because obviously it had to be updated for modern live action, but very directly inspired by the rifle that Boba Fett had then. So that's kind of neat. I like that connective tissue. On the regular figure, it can also peg into his back this way, long ways, but with the jetpack on, no go. And this is the one where he is in full Beskar armor, and it's shiny silver, showing you what the armor looks like before it's really painted much. He also has his IB-94 blaster pistol in a holster. We don't really know much about this pistol, except it's kind of Mandalorian's distinctive pistol. Also, it's based on an 1894 Bergman. Talk about reaching back. Then again, some of the guns we see in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett are actually based on even older 19th century revolvers, so there's that. He has a different style of helmet. It doesn't have the sensor, viewfinder, range detector. Maybe it's a newer model, but you can definitely tell his armor has been pieced together even now with the Beskar. Like I said, he's got a cape. This version doesn't have the whistling birds mini rockets. Still not as cool as the Camino saber dart, but yeah, it'll do at a pinch. And he too believes in not removing his helmet, so he too must smell nice and ripe under there. We'll probably talk more about Djarin and all that in a separate video, but yeah, he's another Mandalorian. He could possibly be the Mandalore, since he has the dark saber. At least kind of up to the point in the series we're at now. Again, he doesn't come with this sword that actually comes with Moff Gideon, but like hell, he deserved to have it, so we'll give it to him. Plus, it's kind of hard to have the rifle in his hands full time. I like the little pistol, though. It's different. It's unique. And this is our pretty much most up-to-date Mandalorian. And there you have it. Or should I say, this is the way. You can't do a Mandalorian video and not say that. No, I've been wanting to do this one for a while, but just haven't had the time or inclination. But, from bounty hunters to the Clone Wars era, fighting each other more than anyone else, to the post-decimation of Mandalore remnants. It's kind of the culture over about a 30-year period, but history dating back thousands of years, with armor dating back hundreds, if not thousands itself. It is kind of a take on the knights in armor thing. Everything is somewhat uniform, at least the general basic components are there, but then everyone can pick their customizations a bit. And they definitely live by code, a creed. And it's very important to them, as Djarin found out towards the end of Mandalorian. I guess, you know what though? When she said he had to go and cleanse himself in the waters in the caves, boom, I don't think it was actually because he took his helmet off. I think it's because she noticed he just needed a bath. I think that was just a sneaky way to go get him to take a bath. What do you think? And as far as Boba Fett in the new series, well, again, I think I'll do a separate video kind of going over the journey of Boba Fett. As far as like Bo-Katan, I don't know, the whole thing is quite interesting. At least more so than, say, the sequel trilogy, in my opinion, even though I'm right. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, remember, I am blind. I did the best I could. Yeah, it is what it is. The internet's full of other pictures. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. With that, this is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.